This has been proven many times. So what we do put in our bodies, it's really important. This, of course, applies to vegan foods, for example, fake bacon and other meat substitutes. A lot of it is processed and a lot of it is harmful for the human body. And that's why a lot of vegans look very malnourished a lot of the time.
And here's the weird part that shows just how much research Misha's really doing when she's making these videos. She shows 2 clips of 2 unhealthy looking vegans while saying this, who I discovered she found on the anti-vegan channel Spherage in their video going over malnourished vegans. They were both Dr. Tim Trader and Simon Nawiz, I don't know how you pronounce that. And if you look at their pages, they were both clearly doing very restricted fruitarian and raw diets. So they weren't even eating those processed foods that she claimed caused malnourishment, while showing footage of the 2 of them. Hey, what is going on, guys? So today we're going to be discussing a right-wing YouTuber named Misha Petrov, who has recently been going through a back and forth of sorts with That Vegan Teacher. There are parts of her response to That Vegan Teacher that have more to do with politics rather than animal rights, so we're going to be skipping responding to those parts of the video. It seemed like That Vegan Teacher, or Katie, we're going to say Katie because it's a lot simpler, was trying to find some middle ground, or common ground between their political positions before going into things like animal rights. But again, we're not going to really go into the political side of the video. Let's get right into it.
You have to understand that you can be physically healthy. You have to understand that there are vegans in the Olympics and that you're not going to drop dead, and that plants have protein, and then I'm totally fine. If you want to know about how animals are treated, you can watch Dominion or Earthlings or Cowspiracy or Seaspiracy.
Yeah, so that's where you lost me a little bit, because I have actually researched this. I've actually watched Seaspiracy and another documentary many years ago, but individuals who have, low income and they can't afford vegan foods or supplements that many have to end up taking if they choose to be vegan.
So Misha seems to be objecting to the part where That Vegan Teacher writes on the screen that eating animals is unnecessary and therefore wrong. And the part of this argument that Misha takes issue with is the premise that eating animals is unnecessary. She objects to this premise while bringing up a couple of things, so let's go through them one by one. Her first thing brought up is low-income people who cannot afford vegan food or even vegan supplements. While it is true that many vegan substitute products can be expensive to people who are low income, this is not necessarily true for vegan foods as a whole. For example, foods like rice, pasta, legumes, bananas, cereals, tofu, bread, and other plant-based foods are actually very cheap compared to your traditional animal products. And from this paper titled, "The Global and Regional Costs of Healthy and Sustainable Dietary Patterns, a Modeling Study," it was found that in countries such as the US, the UK, Australia, and across Western Europe, adopting a vegan, vegetarian, or flexitarian diet could lower your food bill by up to 1/3. And of all of the diets listed, the vegan diet cut food costs the most by up to 1/3. So for the low-income people she's mentioning who live in the countries listed, it's reasonable to infer from this paper that adopting a vegan diet wouldn't be more expensive than their current diet and may also even be less expensive. Outside of the findings of this paper, it is just important to understand that you can have expensive and non-expensive versions of vegan and non-vegan diets. Neither of the 2 diets are inherently expensive. Misha also mentioned that vegan supplements can be expensive, and while this may be true for some supplements, it is not true of supplements one may need to take while consuming a vegan diet. For example, B12 is a nutrient of concern for vegans who are not supplementing. You can purchase a 200-day supply of B12 for $11. Imagine thinking that $11 every 200 days for B12 is expensive. Other nutrients of concern that I don't personally think are exclusively concerns for vegans are iodine and vitamin D3, which you can just get from a multivitamin which also contains B12, which cuts out the need for the previous B12 supplement we just mentioned. You can get a vegan multivitamin which contains all 3 of these nutrients and many more from the vegan company Vegan Vitality for $20, and this is an 180-day supply. If you're a person who can afford to regularly consume animal products, I don't see how spending $20 every 6 months can be expensive, especially when you factor in the money saved from consuming a cheaper kind of diet comprised of bread, rice, pasta, lentils, cereal, oats, etc.
So yeah, even in places up north, a lot of people rely on meat because they need it to have energy. If they were to just eat lettuce and other fruits and vegetables, it would be very difficult for them to survive, and meat is very much in their culture. So there's a lot that goes into this.
So this is just a very vague appeal to people living up north who need meat to survive. I'm not sure who she is talking about, but even if I accept the premise that there are particular people who are in environments where animal products are their only source of sufficient calories, of course, in that scenario, asking these people to consume a plant-based diet just would not make sense, seeing as they quite literally cannot, given their surroundings. But Misha, if you're watching, I believe that vegan teacher is trying to convince you to go vegan. And last I checked, you are not in these situations where animal products are the only or primary food source and going vegan is less practical. So after the part about the North, she starts saying things like, oh, it's also part of their culture, which is just the deployment of the appeal to culture fallacy. And I highly doubt that somebody like Misha, who is right-wing and pro-life, would accept it as morally permissible for a culture to culturally practice abortion for, I don't know, fetus meat and justify it by saying, hey, it's just our culture. She then goes on to perpetuate some vegan health myths, which she just gained from her grandmother, who was apparently a doctor. Here they are.
You know, she's saying that you can be 100% healthy, completely everything is fine. And I'm sure some people can. I'm sure that diet for a lot of people works and they feel great, and that's fantastic. For me personally, my grandmother, who is a doctor, and she has always taught me that meat is part of a balanced diet and very necessary for brain development, and it should be included in your diet. So yeah, that's just how I was raised.
So she makes some vague references to claims that her grandma made concerning meat and how it's essential for a diet to be complete or necessary for a diet to be complete, and that it's needed for brain development. Well, guys, it just so happens that my grandma is also a doctor and has said that meat is not required for a diet to be complete. Now, although this is a joke, Misha, if you're watching, surely you understand the point I'm trying to make here. The appeal to authority fallacy that you're deploying here and just referencing your grandma's claims is problematic, because I could do the same exact thing and we would both have the same level of evidence supporting our positions. Now, in order to substantiate your grandma's claim, we would need something like rigorous health outcome data showing that people who do not consume meat and who are hence consuming an incomplete diet are suffering from some form of a deficiency or health ailment. And of course, Misha has provided nothing of the sort, so what I'll do right now is provide actual evidence in opposition to her claims. You know what, actually, I've covered the findings of this paper before, so let me just play an old clip of mine covering the findings and then we'll keep going. So if we look at the Adventist Health Study 2, we'll see that this study involved 73,308 health conscious participants with the goal of evaluating an association between vegetarian dietary patterns and mortality. All of these participants were broken up into 5 dietary pattern groups, which were non-vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians, lacto-ovo-vegetarians, and vegans. This paper also controlled for important demographic and lifestyle confounding factors like sex, race, geographic region, personal income, educational level, marital status, smoking, alcohol use, exercise, sleep, menopausal status of women, hormone therapy in postmenopausal women, dietary energy, and BMI. What they found was that vegetarian diets were associated with lower all-cause mortality, with some reductions in cause-specific mortality, and the subset of vegetarians that were vegan had a significantly reduced risk in both sexes combined for all-cause mortality, ischemic heart disease mortality, and cardiovascular disease mortality. I'm just so confused that we have findings like this when Misha's grandma said that meat is essential for a diet to be complete and that it's needed for brain development. Perhaps this is because Misha's grandma's claims are completely unfounded.
And in addition, I know that for a lot of vegans, a lot of them are B12 deficient, and it's very hard for them to find iron, zinc. A lot of them experience hair loss and other issues. A lot of people go into the doctor's office, get blood work done, and realize, oh, I wasn't as healthy as I thought I was. And a lot of vegans end up underweight and have to take supplements, and a lot of people don't want to experiment with their diet.
While it is true that vegans can develop a B12 deficiency if they don't supplement properly, this is also true of non-vegans who don't consume high B12 foods. The simple solution is just to purchase a B12 supplement or multivitamin as mentioned earlier. In response to her claims about a vegan diet making somebody underweight, I mean, this is just going to be an issue of calorie intake not being enough. And this applies just as much to a non-vegan who is underweight. The solution for both an underweight vegan and underweight non-vegan is to just eat more calories, which you can get from both vegan and non-vegan food. So a couple minutes later, after some other political parts, that vegan teacher cites a page or a web page from Carnism Debunked, otherwise known as George Martin, going over the common objection people make to vegans, which is that we are harming plants. And this was her response.
There's a site you can go to called Carnism Debunked, where almost every question that you might have is going to have an answer.
Let me look this up. Okay, so in Carnism Debunked, there is one point that I want to discuss. I mean, you guys can take a look too if you want, but this one in particular I find interesting. It says, on their site, it says, in a long list of things non-vegans only ever say when the conversation is about exploiting animals, we have the plants argument. There's absolutely no conviction in this argument because the vast majority of people on this planet know that it is absolutely insane to compare cutting a plant to, say, cutting a puppy. Imagine if we use this logic for human suffering. Let's say there was something on the news about a terror attack and hundreds of people were being blown to smithereens and someone in the room said, what about cabbages? It's the same thing. It's exactly the same principle when it comes to pigs, chickens, cows, etc. So I think this is pretty contradictory because her whole argument for veganism is that we are the same. Our worth as humans is exactly the same as a pig or a chicken. So why isn't a chicken the same as a cabbage? Or as a tree, or as an ant, or as a germ? It should be the same exact thing based on your logic. So why is it okay to kill plants? Just because we can't hear plants cry out in pain, or just because we can't hear trees and how they communicate, doesn't mean that they don't have energy as beings. And if we're all the same, then why is it okay to kill plants? And then you go down this path and this rabbit hole and you go, wait, I can't eat. Because no matter what I do, I'm killing something, and then you gotta die.
All right, so many problems here, guys. She seems to think that the vegan moral philosophy, as that vegan teacher puts it, entails some belief that we are all equal. And when Misha uses the word all, she's not just referring to sentient animals, she's referring to anything that is living, and this includes plants and microscopic bacteria. Now, two things. Number one, I don't recall that vegan teacher at any point saying that human beings and animals are of the same moral value. If she did, Misha, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but either way, in order to possess vegan values, you do not need to equate the moral value of, say, farm animals and humans. It is possible to recognize that non-human animals are of lower value on average than humans, while also recognizing that they are not so much lower in moral value that it is justified to breed them, exploit them, and kill them for a hamburger. Here is a practical example of this outside of veganism. When two parents, say, have 2 human children and a dog, the parents will tend to view their children as more morally valuable than the dog. But this difference in moral value does not now mean that it is ethical to murder their dog for food. I hope that example makes things clear. Also, Misha begins to bring up things like plants being killed for food as a potential concern for vegans because her conception of veganism is such that all living things are equal. This is not true. Veganism cares about the preservation of sentient life, not life. Plants and microscopic bacteria are alive, yes, but there is currently no compelling reason to believe that they are sentient, and therefore they exist outside of the vegan circle of moral consideration. So no, Misha, vegans do not need to care about killing plants while maintaining a vegan moral position.
I am just an animal rights activist. I'm a normal citizen of society who is speaking out to defend the most innocent among us who are living in Holocaust-like conditions. And yes, I do compare it to the Holocaust.
No. I don't agree with her comparing killing farm animals to the Holocaust. We are not trying to exterminate animals. Hitler was trying to exterminate Jews, committing genocide in the name of ethnic cleansing. So it's absolutely evil what was done during the Holocaust, and I don't think you should be comparing it to eating animals. I suggest that you educate yourself more on the millions of Jews that were murdered and realize that it's really not okay for you to be comparing that to killing chickens and pigs. Yeah.
All right, so many problems here. And Misha, if you're a person who thinks that somebody needs to be Jewish to discuss this Holocaust topic, understand that I am Jewish, so hopefully that gives me some points in swaying you. When we look at the definition of the word compare, you definitely can compare the Jewish Holocaust to the animal Holocaust or animal agriculture, because the definition of compare just says that you are, taking 2 things or 2 or more things and finding what is similar or dissimilar between them. I believe what you mean to say is that you can't equate the Jewish Holocaust to the animal Holocaust, and that's a whole other discussion, and I don't want to get into that. So yes, you can compare them, and just some irony here. If you're going to say that, we shouldn't be equating them, but you're actually saying we shouldn't compare them, you're going to have to compare them to illustrate the absurdity of equating, animal agriculture to the Jewish Holocaust. So after this Holocaust portion of the video, she starts asking why it is ethical for somebody to kill animals out of need up north, but not for her in America where it isn't a need, if apparently humans and animals are of the same moral value. Now, again, I don't know where that vegan teacher said we are all equal, but even if she did, I just don't want to spend too much time on this question, seeing as I've already gone over it in a video where I cover, is it really ethical to kill animals out of need? I'll put that in the pinned comment. Let's keep going.
Misha Petrov, you told us that you knew that you were privileged. That's a really great start. You know that. I know that I'm so privileged too.
You are privileged. You know, you can afford vegan food. You don't have health issues from being a vegan. I presume and I hope, and I really do hope that you continue to be healthy and happy. But a lot of people being vegan, it just doesn't work for them. Again, I'm happy that you're healthy, but that's not the case for everybody. A lot of people end up having to take supplements and then just going back to eating meat. Trying to avoid processed foods is always a good idea, because all of these antibiotics and preservatives, whatever else that you are consuming, it does play a role in your mental health and your physical health. So it's very true. This has been proven many times. So what we do put in our bodies, it's really important. This, of course, applies to vegan foods. For example, fake bacon and other meat substitutes. A lot of it is processed and a lot of it is harmful for the human body. And that's why a lot of vegans look very malnourished a lot of the time.
All right, so many things here. Misha starts to again make some sort of health claims about the vegan diet, but provides no sources for her claims. So we're gonna make use of Hitchens' razor here and say that that which can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. And I found it interesting that she pretty much implied the processed nature of vegan mock products is why so many vegans end up being malnourished, as if food being processed can make people malnourished, when in reality, not consuming enough calories is. And here's the weird part that shows just how much research Misha's really doing when she's making these videos. She shows 2 clips of 2 unhealthy looking vegans while saying this, who I discovered she found on the anti-vegan channel Sverige in their video going over malnourished vegans. They were both Dr. Tim Trader and Simon Nawiz, or Nawiz, I don't know how you pronounce that. And if you look at their pages, they were both clearly doing very restricted fruitarian and raw diets. So they weren't even eating those processed foods that she claimed caused malnourishment, while showing footage of the 2 of them. It seems very likely that all Misha did was go on the YouTube search bar and type in malnourished vegans. She found the video from Sverige titled The Epitome of Malnourishment Vegans, or whatever the title is, and just saw these 2 things of footage of malnourished looking vegans and used it, and didn't even verify if they were consuming the processed foods she claims causes malnourishment in people before using the footage. It is very obvious just from a brief look at both of their pages that both of these vegans did not consume high amounts of processed vegan food. These kind of fruitarian raw vegans actually normally tend to be vehemently against these processed types of vegan food.
And you recently said that you were an atheist, but you started to, question that a little bit, and you had an experience where you think there might be God or something like that. In a way, honestly, that raises a bit of an alarm bell for me. Like, oh my God, don't become a religious freak. But at the same time, Misha, I get it.
Wait. It raises an alarm bell. This is exactly what I talked about in my last video about people dismissing spiritual individuals or religious people because they are religious or because they believe in a higher power. And I don't think that's right. And I get it. A lot of wars were started over religions. A lot of people suffered. But religion has also done a lot of good. So we can't just look at the bad side of it and call religious people loonies. And for a lot of people, this relates to your vegan lifestyle. For a lot of people, that's where their morals come from, is from what their religion teaches them, or a spiritual connection that they feel, whatever that may mean. That's a lot for a lot of people. That's where their morality originates from. So if anything, I think it's actually a little bit hypocritical, because she seems like the extremist here. I mean, she is a vegan and she's not a vegetarian, so she's like cut everything out that has to do with animals. And she's trying to force that onto other people.
So there's this implication here that vegan teacher is extreme and that she is vegan and she is forcing her views on others. It is always odd when you have a meat eater saying this about vegans when we aren't the ones forcing anything on others, and in fact we're fighting against a lifestyle which forces animals into existence who will be exploited, commodified, and killed. We are fighting against actual force, whereas people like Misha say vegans are forcing views onto people. We in fact are not. Just look up the definition of the word force. So let's take a look at these 2 pictures and you let me know what looks more like force. This picture of vegan activism, or this picture of what Misha actively participates in and supports, which vegan activism aims to abolish. All right, guys, so that's the end of the video. Hopefully Misha sees this video. And Misha, if you do see this video, I'm definitely open to having just a calm, polite discussion with you on these topics. I feel like you haven't really thought of them as much as you should before making a video on them. It could be a debate as well. Totally up to you. And for the other people watching, if you don't know, I do have a book where I go over all, if not most, of the anti-vegan arguments you're going to hear online and how to respond to them. And you can find that in the pinned comment below. If you support my work and want early access to content, you can support me on Patreon. That'll also be linked below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude.
Fuck off, I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who's your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,